Who was your co-worker from hell? Had a colleague who genuinely enjoyed seeing people not do well and enjoyed when people felt uncomfortable. She's very manipulative. And is actually quite good at it. She would ask you questions and sympathize with whatever you've got going on. Only to turn around and tell everyone what you just confessed to her. After about 2-3 months with the company. If she hasn't already somehow screwed you over. You've heard enough about her to know that if you don't want the rest of the room to find out, then you don't tell her. Yeah. I'm talking about you, Carolina. I had a 50-year-old colleague who would message women on sugar baby apps and rub one out over his trousers. Saw him blow his load in the open office. He sat next to me. Kept on happening. Reported it. He said he had a genital rash. But admitted to messaging people on social media. I got in trouble for my accusations. Fast forward 8 months. He's sitting opposite me now. He starts rubbing one out in the open office again. I recorded him. Showed my manager. And he was finally fired. He was a CNT too. Blonde monster peaks in high school. Has been at her job too long. And tries to control everyone. My job has a high turnover in this one office but refuses to believe it's her. He told the general manager that he might be a bit late for a shift due to his second job. When the GM reluctantly said okay. He apparently took this as thinking he had free rein to come and go as he pleased. He'd show up anywhere from 7:30-8:30 for his 7:00 shift. Then when the doors closed he'd insist he had to head out and he had an early morning the following morning. Leaving everyone else to do the closing work. He also had other issues like being rude to customers and other employees. People mostly kept quiet until one day a higher level manager had to sub on night shift. When he went to leave early and the rest of us with the work, the manager flipped. If you lay your f-king finger on that money before this work is completely done, don't bother coming back. The guy insisted he had permission and left anyway. When our GM returned and he tried to come back, our manager said, "You warned me you were going to be late one time. And I never once gave you permission to otherwise start late or leave early. Clean out your locker now." We had a sysadmin who would come to work and run his real estate business from his desk while he was supposed to be working. The whole time coughing and sneezing and sniffling constantly. We called him Chi. He would also call friends and family and have hours-long conversations with them while we all had to listen. He picked up the nickname Thanksgiving Dinner Guy for using the break room, full kitchen, to cook entire meals that wouldn't be out of place at a family gathering. One of the offices in another wing had a sheet by the door for people to log when they saw him and what he was cooking that day. He didn't like any of us. The feeling was mutual, and left books like jerks at work on his desk. When he finally got fired, they found out he never did any of his sysadmin work. No backups. No password changes. No log monitoring. I fully acknowledge there are far worse things. But she microwaved salmon. Girl I worked with when I was a personal shopper. She tried to get me fired a couple of times because she saw I was moving up faster than her. We both got sent to work at a different location for a couple of months and she went around bad-mouthing me to anyone who would listen. So they thought I was a shitty employee and she was amazing. I proved myself with my work ethic and they realized she was a liar and it definitely changed their opinion of her. I ended up going to a different location and when she went back to our original location she continued to say horrid things about me. My co-workers took my side and called her out on her BS. She left not long after on a bad note with them. I work shifts. Can't go home unless I pass over my report to the next person face to face. One particular bitch loves coming in late. Not 5 or 10 minutes late. I'm talking 25 to 30 minutes late. Best part. She loves bitching about how everyone is always on her ass for coming in late. She literally lives 5 minutes walk away from work. So no one knows why she's always late. Edit. This was when I worked in the ICU. I can't just abandon my patient willy-nilly. She almost got me fired because she wanted to find the weakest looking guy to be her little errand boy. When I told her politely to go screw herself, she told HR that I had been taking work out of her queue in the system. It wasn't a very good lie though. Because why would I want to do more work than I have to? I even said this to HR in the disciplinary meeting. This woman who was one of those people who always had to one-up you. Like if you cut your thumb off. She was just recently sawed in half. She was constantly complaining and miserable and it was so draining. I had a co-worker like this. Drove us all crazy. Around 2002 in an IT department. Here's some of his claims. Friends with George Lucas. Dated Kirstie Alley. Steven Spielberg was going to produce one of his screenplays. But someone was jealous and claimed he plagiarized her work and Spielberg believed him, but she had connections so he couldn't do anything about it. Had a degree in law and was a lawyer before he became a software developer and won every case. Dude was maybe 25 at the time. He sucked as a developer and I flat out told him once he should re-enter the legal field, which he somehow took as a compliment. Played golf with Bill Gates on more than one occasion. There's a lot more, but these are the biggest lies. Not as bad as some. But I'll never forget the 22-ish-year-old girl who spent hours of one shift telling me, with no prompting at all, about how she used to be a raging heroin addict but she was over it now and had become extremely religious. She went into very explicit detail about her drug deals and the things she'd done to get to drugs. My shy homeschooled ass was stunned. The very next day she got fired for stealing $20 from the cash register. I work with a woman who is threatened by other women. Especially if they are younger and have more education than her. She consistently tries to discourage women from furthering their education. And constantly tries to get women she is threatened by fired. She is a goddamn nightmare. Edit. After reading the comments, I am so sad to see that so many people have dealt with the same issue. I hope that you are all in better work environments now. Or will be soon. I used to work part-time at a shipping warehouse and at one point, we ended up hiring this 16-year-old kid. He made a ton of mistakes that we ended up having to fix for him. But I gave him the benefit of the doubt at first just because he was new. But not only did he never learn from his FCK ups, but he was incredibly lazy and lacked any self-awareness. There were instances where he was given a task, but then he'd either dick around on his phone most of the time, hide out in the bathroom for like 45 minutes and then hoped we wouldn't notice, or just whine to my supervisor that he didn't want to do whatever he was assigned. Because of that, he would often take half the day to do like 30 minutes of work and would then complain that he had too much work piled on top of him. It was ridiculous. He lasted maybe a month before my supervisor let him go. Had a co-worker who always gossiped about others and would say horrible things about everyone in the office. It created a super toxic culture and caused many people to leave. Not because they didn't like the work. They just hated the culture. Had a co-worker who would talk to you in a low, earnest, confidential tone about everyone else. Instigator. It's, I think so and so's a bitch. Don't you? Innocent person. IP. No. I like her. Is. What about the time she did such and such thing? Don't you think that was bitchy? I think that was bitchy. IP. Well, I guess I could see how people might think that was bitchy. But, is the next day. Blasting to anyone who would listen. OMG. IP told me she thinks so and so is a bitch. And she kept talking about the time she did such and what a bitch she was for doing that. Fortunately she got cold-shouldered out. Basically everyone removed her from social media and refused to talk to her in person about anything that wasn't strictly task related. She left shortly after. The 50-something turd that was the owner's son. Spoiled brat. Reminded me constantly who he was if I stood up to him. Creepy as hell too. Could never just tell any of the women they look nice. Actually told me one day that my legs look nice. I was wearing a skirt. That was the last time I wore a skirt to work for a long time. I immediately started looking for a new job within a month. There were so many other things that occurred. I was turned off from working for a small family-owned business since had an assistant who plotted to get me fired and take my job. Some of my workers let me know because he tried to get them on board with him. Eventually, due to politics, I was demoted but asked to be put on the shift relieving him. We would work 12-hour shifts on weekends. After being relieved by phone a couple of times, against the rules, I intentionally came in 4 hours early and he was nowhere on site. I still got a call from him when he should have relieved me like he was still on site. I let the guards know and they videotaped him and I got him fired. She was a lady in her 50s. We worked at a DRS office. Nothing was ever her fault. She could not take even the nicest constructive criticism and constantly complained about everything. One of my nicest co-workers ever, who was around the same age, so not an ageism thing, often was the recipient of her blame, and because she never took responsibility, it was regularly the same issues she never learned to correct. They bickered a lot after a couple years of this. One day the nice co-worker went to the car to grab her anxiety med, and the obnoxious one went to the office manager and then HR, saying she thought the nice one went to get a weapon to hurt her. Like what? She didn't even own a weapon? And the nice one got fired. I was absolutely shocked. Any lingering respect I had for her was gone. I've had a lot of jobs and met some shitty people, but she was the most stressful nightmare who could boohoo her way into getting pity parties on cue. She told our boss that she wanted to break into my apartment and touch all of my stuff because I bet it's all really cool. This was right after I found out she'd moved into the apartment next door. She would send stuff to my apartment just so I would put it on her stoop and knock on her door. This was a person that was in the aircraft qualification training squadron at the same time as me. He wasn't an intentionally terrible person, but his lack of self-awareness made any interaction around him difficult and exhausting. He washed out of another flying career field. In the first sims, before the flying phase, he refused to use established procedures, resulting in degraded ability to provide required data to external players. Managed to fail his first instructional ride, despite it being nearly impossible to fail if you show up. He could not figure out how to take leave, despite several people walking him through the process. Rather than trying to solve any problem, he would announce it to the rest of the room, and if no one jumped in to help him, asked the nearest person. He managed to frustrate and time Jack, the kindest instructor I know, because he didn't have a basic understanding of a training airspace. In a bid to get back to more pressing, and more likely to be completed, tasks, he gave me an apologetic look as he suggested that LTPUB Spotter was a smart student and could probably help him get up to speed. I could not. In civil service, there was this one woman who 1. Actively hit other people. 2. Changed entered times on timesheets without the original party's consent. This is a huge no-no legally. 3. Sabotaged my work and other people's. No matter how many complaints we submitted, she was never fired. Rumor had it she was never fired because she had some serious dirt on the administration, the kind that shouldn't be leaked to the press. There was this one guy who had terrible breath, and he never shut up. Would seriously come over to your desk and talk non-stop about bullshit for what seemed like forever. The whole time you're sitting there smelling his terrible breath. And of course on top of that he's never doing any actual work. Luckily he was eventually fired. My manager a few jobs ago. It was a tech company. We were the marketing team, which really just meant digital marketing. She had a very loose grasp on how our various tech platforms worked, and one day said to me when discussing her exasperation at posting a YouTube video to our brand channel, "I don't really understand the internet." She was dead serious. It was 2014. She was ultimately fired. First day of work she lit her desk on fire. Second day of work she ate her lunch and broke out in hives. Third day of work she arrives at work and sat in her passenger seat until one of us went out to check on her. She claimed she hurt her back trying to pick up her purse and had one of her co-workers drove her home. would not let us use the same microwave as her as she claimed she was allergic to garlic. The list went on and on. Until she was fired. Oh Marion, I wonder where you are now, as you were so entertaining. The guy who touched himself the entire time I was doing the unbowed packet with him immediately comes to mind. We had a middle-aged lady that smelled like tuna. I was a manager and had to send her home one particularly hot day. I also had to put her chair outside after she left as it still smelled. It was such a shame as she was a really nice lady. She just f***ing stank. An MMA fighter with serious PTSD, although it sounds like he was crazy and mean before he went to war. I have brownish skin. And he would threaten to kill me multiple times a day at work. Once he put me in a sleeper hold just to put me down for fun. And 2 other guys had to get him off. Guy was laughing maniacally the whole time. Sometimes he would hit me around the waistline when no one was looking. So no one could see the bruises. Threatened to kill me and my family members if I ever reported it. Our supervisor was an ex-army ranger. Whom I deeply respected. But he defended this guy through it all and I never understood that. Finally the guy got fired after 2 years and ended up in jail for a while. But those were 2 terrible years. My boss, he always talked about other employees behind their backs when they left the room. Had a guy that I worked with in my meat department at the store I work at. He would lose his mind over any little thing and get super angry and make everyone very uncomfortable. I was training a new guy and he was on one of his tantrums, so I had to get my managers to help me out. One time he got so mad that he threw an actual meat cleaver in the wall and the dent is still there to this day. He got fired a few months ago and it's been the happiest that the department has been in a long time. One day, my shift manager rewarded us for getting through the rush with free milkshakes from next door. I was so happy and couldn't wait to drink mine. I went out on a delivery. I work at a pizza joint before I could drink the shake. So I put my name on it in Sharpie and put it in the fridge. When I came back, I saw my co-worker drinking it. Dude makes eye contact and finishes it right in front of me. This one co-worker changed how I approached working. I was in the workforce for a decade when I decided to take a job with a very small, woman-owned company. It was just the owner and 2 employees. Myself included. I worked my ass off and was very successful the first few months. And soon the other employee started to brazenly slack off. Eventually calling an off-on, with what became the lamest excuses. Weekly. Once she was out for almost a month because of a vague family issue that I'm convinced was made up. Our boss was so lenient because my co-worker had been there for years. I ended up working harder and extra hours, even weekends, to keep our clients happy and the business going strong. Which I so realized just enabled my co-worker's shyness. I quickly burned out. Got the hell out. And never let any person or business ever exploit me and take advantage of me ever again. FCKU. Becca. Casey. Casey forgot to show up for her interview. But was somehow still hired. Casey seemed to have all the signs of it. And admitted she probably did. But her dad was a doctor and said it wasn't a real thing, so she never got treatment. Casey told long, rambling stories about things no one cared about. And would try to read personal items in your purse. Casey worked the late rotation after the supervisors left. And would just read fanfiction, leaving everyone else to work the joint queue while doing nothing herself. Casey bounced on a rubber exercise ball that squeaked. Everyone got theirs taken away because Casey fell off hers and they were deemed a safety hazard. Casey would kick her shoes off and rub her fingers between her bare toes at her desk. After everyone left, Casey would raid their candy jars and snack drawers with her toe hands. The only nice thing the evil supervisor ever did was fire Casey. Back when I used to load trucks, we had a dude who lasted exactly two days on the job. His first day, he seemed normal enough. His second day, he came in drunk as FCK, a real no-no when you are working around heavy equipment. And instead of getting down to business he just kinda dicked around doing a half-assed job, thereby making everyone else's job harder, and making crude asshole jokes about the other workers on the line. And when the line supervisor told him to knock it off and do his job he told her to stop being a bitch. Thank FCK the jackass did not come back because we all wanted to kick his ass after that day.